Posted by you/Lisette Forver. House hunting ghost. During our first home search, we looked at a lot of homes. We thought we wanted a particular style of home, we focused on those type of homes. Our realtor found one in the northern suburb in our town. The day arrived for the showing. The realtor opened the door, the house was empty, a few pieces of furniture remained. We did the standard tour following her from room to room. The master bedroom was on the first floor. It had Berber carpet that was snagged/messed up. My husband and the realtor went back down the hall to the great room. As I continued to look at the carpet, I was bent down looking at the carpet. I saw the realtor go past the doorway and through the door to the basement. I stood up to follow her down the stairs. The lady had short black hair, tan coat and gold earrings. Just as I was starting to go down to the basement, I realized that my husband and the realtor were upstairs. During this moment, I took my eyes off the lady and stopped. I did not proceed down the stairs. When I looked down the stairs, the lady had turned the corner. The realtor and my husband come down the stairs saying the basement was next. The realtor went down the stairs, I followed looking at the realtor. Her hair was different and her coat was not the same and no earrings. The basement was empty. All the lights were on and no one was down there. I was spooked, that had to be a prior owner. I faked a headache and called off the next showing. When we left the house, I saw the lady looking out the window at us. I told my husband what happened. He said the realtor told him the owner had passed away. I knew the lady had died in that home. My tribes, I am Dine in Mississippi Choctaw, believe you cannot live in a home where someone died. The ghost was not malevolent, but I feel she was letting me know, she was present. Posted by you/Mama Grizzly 03. My son saw the ghost of my grandfather. When my son was about 2, we were living with my mother and father. In this house the dining room faced the front with windows all around, half of the room facing the front yard and beside the driveway. On one side of the driveway, was a single tree that was kind of out of place and away from anything else. I remember I was in the living and I started to hear him laughing and playing. This caught my attention, because I knew no one was in there with him. I walked into the dining room to see what he was up to and saw him standing at one of the big windows bouncing up and down, laughing, and waving. So I asked him who he was waving at and he said Papa George. I froze, trying to process what he had just said and asked him what he had said. Again, he replied Papa George. He is standing at that tree. He didn't have a grandfather George, but I did. The problem with that is that this was 2012 and my grandfather died in 1998. I rushed to get my father and told him he needed to come to the dining room now. When he got to the dining room, my son was still staring out the window and I said ask him who he is playing with. As soon as he asked, my son repeated himself for the third time and all the color in my dad's face drained. After my dad composed himself, he asked my son what my grandfather looked like. My son told him he had on blue pants and a black and red shirt. Then I saw a tear run down his face. I knew it was because my grandfather always wore blue jeans and a black and red plaid shirt. Posted by you/Obi. Lights. My grandfather's ghost, old habits die hard. My grandfather passed away in 2005. He was a stern, stubborn, old-fashioned man who had been retired for many years. During the time I knew him he had a daily routine that only changed, a little, when relatives came to visit. He would spend every day watching NASCAR while making periodic trips to the kitchen to refresh his vodka/soda water. Every time, he would walk from his television room through the old creaky hallway to the kitchen with his cane, step, step, cane. Step, step, cane. Etc. He would always return to his leather rocking chair and resume his daily activities of drinking and rocking. His passing was sad but not wholly unexpected. An unknown number of months passed between his death and my family's experiences. After a family gathering, my cousins and I decided to spend the night at Grammy's house so we could all hang out together. I would say I was probably 12 to 13 at the time, and after a long day of eating and playing I went to fall asleep on a spare couch in Papa's old TV room. At around midnight I was awoken by the sound of raspy breathing and Papa's old chair rocking back and forth. When I realized what I was hearing I attempted to convince myself it was something else. I told myself I had to be imagining it or it must be my uncle snoring. He had pretty severe breathing problems so he snored loudly every night, but while I was trying to convince myself, I clearly heard my uncle's snores over the sounds of the rocking chair and raspy breaths. I ended up trying to sleep elsewhere for the night. I decided on the living room located next to the old creaky hallway and attempted to sleep. Before I could, I began to hear the all too familiar sounds of step, step, cane. Step, step, cane. Up and down the hallway, back and forth for what felt like hours. I did manage to fall asleep eventually, but this is the moment I decided ghosts are real. Fast forward a few more weeks and I start hearing that my Grammy has been having trouble sleeping because, every night her deceased husband would stand at the foot of her bed looking confused. She claims this continued for weeks and only ended after she consulted a friend who was a medium. She told my Grammy that Papa didn't know that he had passed on and Grammy needed to let him know. The next time he appeared, she jumped from her bed and told him that he had passed on and he needed to move on to whatever comes next. She claims he faded from view into a point of light and afterwards, no one had another experience in her home. I will never forget this story and it is always the first thing I talk about when people ask my opinion on ghosts. It is one of my only personal experience and probably doesn't seem like much, but it will always stay with me. Posted by you/Claudia. Insights. A friendly ghost haunting in Dallas, Texas. 7 years ago, I rented a house in Dallas, Texas. There was a long hallway between all of the bedrooms. On the first week of my arrival, I kept seeing a flicker of a little girl running down the hallway. I'm used to seeing spirits, but she was shy and didn't let herself be seen for over a month. I'd hear her running behind me, would turn around and she was gone. I built trust with her over months and was able to learn her story. Her name was Jillian and was 6 years old at the time of her passing. One night, she showed me what happened to her. While in my bedroom, I could see it transform into a field. A man had raped and murdered her. He then buried her about 700 feet from where the house lot was located. She used to play in these fields. The area where the hallway was felt safe for her. I asked if she wanted to cross over, but she wasn't ready yet. She visited almost weekly. She was playfully devious like most kids are. While I lived there, rings, keys and knickknacks would go missing. We'd ask her to return them, and days or weeks later they would appear. Several of the guests that visited me or spent the night reported seeing her too. We would always hear her running down the hallway and could hear her giggle when she was playing. Though she was a haunting, Jillian was a friendly one. Posted by you/Gooch Oak Experience from someone that didn't believe in ghosts or hauntings. Before the experience I didn't believe in ghosts at all. But now I don't really know what to believe. It all started when my aunt was moving to a different house because she and my 2 cousins claimed their house to be haunted. She wanted us to help grab their stuff from the house so they can pack it. At first I was prepared to not see anything out of the ordinary and expected very little. On our way there I heard my mom say that my cousins were crying because of what was happening there. The only thing I could remember of them talking about as to why they were crying was because of wall paint peeling off. At this point I thought that their minds were playing tricks on them, or maybe something in the environment is causing them to act so strange. When I got there it looked normal, the neighborhood looked pretty nice. However, as I took my first step inside I suddenly felt like I was in a room with a murderer or a serial killer. I started to feel a mix of emotions. I was angry, scared, and sad all at the same time. As I got more into the house I started to feel like I was at the brink of crying but never did. When I got to my cousin's room I saw the wall and how the paint was peeled off. It looked like an angel being slaughtered by a few demons to me, and my cousin said that is also what she saw. As we progressed further into the house I swear to God I heard a girl crying. My mom said she heard it too. We went to check out where the source was and we were led to the garage. As we were just about to turn on the light the garage door sounded like someone was banging on it. We quickly ran out of the house getting the last boxes and left. I don't know what to think of this, but I know what I went through. I don't want to believe in hauntings or ghosts. It doesn't make sense to me how ghosts and spirits could exist. I kept making up excuses like maybe they were just auditory illusions that we all heard, maybe all our minds were playing with us. But I can't ignore what I have been through. I don't know what to believe anymore. Posted by you/Crossing the Rubicon. He's been calling to me for months. I'm not entirely sure where to start with that one, but let's say the last few months have been weird. Back in January, I had a very detailed dream. In this dream I was burying a body under the patio in the garden. The garden didn't look like mine and it wasn't one that I recall ever seeing. While I was burying this body, a man who I had never seen before was standing in front of me watching me the entire time. He didn't say anything, he just stared at me. I remember how scared I felt, knowing I needed to keep this body a secret. I woke up the next morning remembering every detail, but it was just a weird dream so I brushed it off. Things started to get a little strange in my house from that day. My dogs started to become more reactive, barking and physically scared of something that I couldn't see on my landing. I'd woken up a few times in the night and could have sworn I'd seen a figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. This wasn't even the worst part. The day after I first started seeing the figure in the doorway, I was changing my bed sheets. I threw back the duvet to find spots of dried blood on my sheets. I thought that maybe I'd scratched myself in my sleep, however I couldn't find any evidence of this. I changed my bed sheets and thought nothing of it. The next day while making my bed, the blood was there again. This has continued every day. I couldn't find the source of the blood and it was starting to drive me mad. This figure had become more frequent, almost nightly at this point. I started to speak to it, asking it questions, maybe it needed help? Never would I get an answer. I was thinking about seeing a medium or getting the house blessed because at this point it was driving me insane. That was until last week. For the first time in months, no figure, no blood, no barking dogs. Everything just stopped. The following day I was scrolling through social media and came across a photo of a man that was attached to an article. I hadn't even looked at the article title, I was fixated on this picture. As soon as I saw his face, I knew it was the man from my dream. I clicked straight on the article to find out that this man's body had recently been recovered from underneath a woman's patio. It turns out she had stabbed him in the neck, wrapped him in a bedsheets and buried him under her garden patio back in November. I have no idea if this is just a weird coincidence or if he's been trying to tell me for months what's happened to him. Posted by you/shameless_boy06. Someone was judging my recorder playing skills. So this happened a couple years back when I was in the 7th grade. I was in my bedroom practicing this one song for my music class. I forgot what the song was, but it's not really important. The whole time I was practicing, the light in my room were flickering on and off. I had even made a joke in my head about there being a ghost in my room since ghost and flickering lights are usually connected. I didn't give the light flickering much thought since they've been doing that for a few days now. So anyways, I was practicing the song for about 10 minutes until I was able to play each note perfectly without screwing something up. I celebrated for a second, though it had only taken a moment for me to notice that my light had stopped flickering. Just as I got the song right, the light had just stopped, and was back to normal. In that moment I was scared shitless and just ran out of my room. I went downstairs and told my mom about what had just happened. My mom, being a superstitious woman, believed my story and said it was probably my nana, who had died a few years prior to this, listening to me play. After my mom told me this, I felt really bad for just running out of the room like that. A few minutes later I head back to my room and upon making it there I just said, "Thanks Nana," and continued practicing my recorder. My lights never flickered again after that day and I ended up getting a good grade on that music assignment. So in the end it was all good, thanks Nana. Posted by you/delicatepunkrock. Wholesome ghost cat came to heal me from my grandma's passing. My grandmother passed on October 25, 2015, which was her birthday. The night before, my mom visited her in the hospital and gave her a stuffed kitty because grandma adored cats. Her nurses said she was stroking the kitty all night until she ultimately passed away in her sleep peacefully. The next week was filled with the legal side of someone passing, death certificates, wills, setting up the funeral, closing accounts, selling and giving away belongings. We hardly had a second to mourn her. Grandma's funeral was held on that Saturday afternoon and we buried her with her stuffed kitty. It also happened to be Halloween. My family unanimously agreed that we wouldn't be doing our normal Halloween candy activities for obvious reasons. We placed a bowl of candy outside around 5 p.m. with our porch lights off to not cause too much disturbance, and brought the empty bowl back inside around 10 p.m. Around midnight, I couldn't sleep and decided to go downstairs and grab some water. As I walked down the stairs, I saw a black cat sitting on the bottom step. I froze where I was standing and looked to the living room to see my mom was still awake watching TV. I called out, "Mom? Did we get a cat?" My mom turned around, confused as hell because she and Dad do not like cats at all, and said, "No? Absolutely not." We both approached the cat and immediately this little guy is all over us. He's adamant about being pet and I've never seen a more loving cat in my life. We pet him for about 15 to 20 minutes and decided he was probably a neighbor's cat, so we opened the front door and he walked right out without hesitation. It was like he knew that we needed him for just a moment, and he left when his time was up. Weirdly, I don't remember Mom and I having much conversation about the cat immediately after it happening, but the next day we tried to figure out where it might have came from. He was nowhere to be found in the neighbors' yards and we never saw him again. I like to think that my grandma came to us in the spirit of that cat to let us know that we did a good job laying her to rest and she is at peace now. Posted by you/Sadie. Sunhome. My work. I guess it's about time I mentioned that my workplace is haunted. I've been a bartender here for about 8 years. I don't want to say where, because it's actually quite famous to the whole world. But nobody really knows that it's haunted except for the employees and previous employees. Most of us have an experience or two, although we do have 1 or 2 employees who have worked there for decades and said they've never experienced anything. But more employees have had experiences than haven't. I have been tapped on the shoulder, tugged on the shirt and felt hands on my back when no one is around and I'm alone in my space. Other employees have mentioned experiencing these things as well. Some have seen ghosts there. I honestly couldn't guess how many ghosts we have. A few maybe. The building is 3 floors, and the 3rd floor is definitely the scariest. Most employees will attest to that. In fact, we have a bar back in his 60s who has to clean up the 3rd floor at the end of the night, and he hates it so bad. He's had so many things happen to him up there. But he speaks mostly Spanish, and my Spanish is very amateur at best, so he's only conveyed a few stories to me. He also doesn't like to talk about it. He points at his arm, then rubs it, insinuating goosebumps, and shakes his head no. My boss saw an old man in a mirror upstairs on that same floor. She was washing her hands in the bathroom with the door open, and when she looked up in the mirror, she could see the hallway reflected in it behind her, and she said an old man peeked out of one of the doorways and looked at her. She hauled ass downstairs and sent security up to look around, but nobody was there. Apparently before I worked there, they had a security guard who was a really big dude. Really intimidating energy. One night he was supposed to be watching the 2nd floor while waiting to close up, and he was up there by himself. I guess he came down to my boss in tears saying that he could never work on any floor except the 1st floor again, otherwise he would have to quit. I mostly work on the 1st floor, and that's where most of my incidences have happened. The most notable one was catching in my peripherals, a very short person in a white shirt walking super fast past my bar and into our kitchen. The movement struck me as strange compared to how our other bar backs moved, so I stepped out of the bar and checked the kitchen. Nobody was there. My main bar back, I will call him Carlos, told me about the ghost before I ever experienced it. So we've talked about the ghost a lot. Phantasma, we say. Spanish for ghost. After I saw this figure go into the kitchen, and found the kitchen empty, I went over to Carlos, who was sweeping part of the dance floor. All I said to him was, I think I just saw the phantasma. And he replies, white t-shirt, this tall? Gesturing a very short height with his hand. It immediately gave me goosebumps. Yes, I said. He replies with something like, yeah, I saw him walk into the kitchen earlier. I went back there to tell him he couldn't be there, but nobody was there. The bar backs claim to experience a lot in the kitchen. Really, there's experiences all over the damn building. If I told all the stories I heard, this post would never end. Maybe I'll tell some more another time. Posted by you/Radiant Badger 6274. Possessed while praying? Has anyone else experienced anything like this? I grew up religious. 6 years ago I got really into meditation, yoga, and a more new age focus on energy, and have been since until a couple weeks ago. I have had sleep paralysis and felt a constant presence at night since I started meditation/energy work, and it has completely terrified and kept me from turning off the lights and being able to sleep. I prayed for protection every night but never felt peace, usually more anxiety after. I decided I wanted to be closer to God, so instead of meditating I started consistently praying. I'd been solely praying instead of meditating or anything else for a couple days. One night when praying, I decided to pray to Jesus for protection from had been and was currently terrifying me every night. While praying, I started to go into a trance. My body was shaking and words I don't know were coming out of my mouth. My head was vibrating. My ears were buzzing with a loud, intense tone from inside or on me. I'm not sure how long it lasted. Suddenly I felt the buzz in my ear leave in a whoosh sound as if something exited me, and my eyes opened as if I had just come back to my body or regained control. I didn't notice it until after it had ended. But I was left with the feeling of love after. I don't know what happened, but I think Jesus protected me in that moment. I haven't had sleep paralysis or felt scared like I used to since then. I don't think there's anything wrong with meditation or energy work. But I must have been doing something wrong or somehow invited something dark into my life. Posted by you/Sadie. Sunhome. The Queen Mary. The December before the pandemic, My husband and I attended a party on the Queen Mary and rented a room on the ship for the occasion. I was very excited as I had never been on a ship like that before. I had also heard stories about one of the pools being haunted by the ghost of a little girl. After the party ended around 11 p.m., we changed our clothes into something more comfortable because I wanted to wander the ship and explore. They kicked everyone off the ship who wasn't staying the night there. We spent a couple hours wandering that amazing ship inside and out. Before we finished up, we went back down to the level the party had been on, only now it was completely empty. Same level as the pool, by the way, which they had closed up. But you could still look through the windows, which I absolutely did. I spent a good 5 minutes with my face pressed up to those windows before we walked on. I didn't see anything. After walking down a short hallway, we were in the enormous empty ballroom which had been so bustling just a few hours earlier. My husband picked up a broken drumstick left behind from one of the bands. Just then, from the direction of the pool came a loud child's laugh coming towards us, as if a little kid was running our direction down the hallway laughing loudly. I immediately lock eyes with my husband. "It's just a kid," he says dismissively. But there is no kid. We are alone on that entire floor. I look at my watch and it says 1:01 a.m. We go back to our room, seeing no one else along the way. Once in bed, I start Googling about Queen Mary ghost stuff. I found a forum that mentioned a common occurrence is hearing children's laughter around the pool area. We then discussed how we never saw any children that night, even during the party which was for 21 and over, so why would we? We went to sleep feeling in awe and a tad eerie. I can still hear that laughter in my mind clear as day. I'm sad that my mom had our house blessed. Me and my parents/brothers inherited the 250-year-old farmhouse that has been in my dad's family for several generations. Growing up, my gram lived here and all kinds of cool things happened. Lights turning on and off, TV channels changing, footsteps in the empty attic above. It never scared me, it made me feel comforted almost. We always attributed these things to Sammy, a name that's on a gravestone in the basement. He was the father of a friend/neighbor of my grandparents. The stone is not in the ground. The man is actually buried across the street. We think they made the gravestone down there and it was too heavy to carry out. It also could have been my great-great-grandpa, who passed away in the back room which is now a bathroom. When we moved in, I was 12. The interesting things picked up. We'd hear things from the barn, like neighing and whinnying years after the horses had passed. Me and my brother even heard the sound of toy trains going off from the loft of the barn, and found a box of my grandpa's old train sets, the kind that gained power from the electric tracks. Some things scared me, like hearing my dad shout my name when he wasn't home. Or the times my dog would get locked in the bathroom with the light and fan on when we weren't home. My mom had the house blessed, and everything stopped. This was more than a decade ago. I still wonder if it was a bad spirit or just my family members screwing around. I guess I'll never know.